Hey guys, welcome to Get Busy Watching. I'm your host, Honest Dan. Let's talk Jill sandwiches.
Oh, Barry!
That was too close. You were almost a Jill sandwich.
You're right.
In commemoration of the upcoming Netflix series, Resident Evil Infinite Darkness, I'm taking a look back on the CG movies. Not to be confused with the live-action adaptation starring the ever-amazing Milla Jovovich, but those were not great movies. Well, I guess I like the first one okay.
You're all going to die down here.
But subsequent sequels are pretty lame and almost have nothing to do with the video games they're based on, other than a couple of throwaway enemies that harken back to a specific entry.
Stars.
But we're not here to talk about those, we're here to talk about the CG animated films. Say what you want about them. When I watch them, I at least feel like they're Resident Evil. They're far better adaptations than the live actions ever were. So let's get into this. This is my honest opinion of Resident Evil Degeneration. Set 5 years after the events of Raccoon City, survivor Claire Redfield, reprised by Allison Court, is ready to leave an airport to meet with a fellow employee of the company they both work for. However, the airport is thrown into chaos when a zombie infestation forces Claire into hiding. Coming to her rescue is Special Response Team member Angela Miller, played by Laura Bailey, and Special Agent Leon S. Kennedy, reprised by Paul Mercier. The rescue is successful, but Claire reveals that she saw the man who is possibly behind the attack. Angela's brother, Curtis Miller, voiced by Roger Craig Smith, who seeks justice for the death of his family in the Raccoon City incident.
He was arrested for threatening Will Pharma.
He just demanded that information be made public.
Unfortunately, the rest of the world doesn't see it that way.
Bit stupider than I remember, but I still kinda like it. This isn't really a criticism, but the movie has clearly shown its age. The animation can be pretty janky at times, and the character models look even worse than their video game counterparts. I don't know what it is, but Leon looks fine, but Claire looks off. It's the mouth, I think. Seriously, I think her Code Veronica model looked better, and that was made 8 years before this movie. Hell, I've seen 3D hentai that looked better than this. I am, of course, quoting anonymous sources. But, as I've been screaming for a long time now, older animation doesn't bother me if the story is any good. We'll get to that, but I just wanted to highlight the film's age. And I also wanted to point out that the film was created by Digital Frontier, who have been known to work on trailers and cutscenes for video games, or otherwise assisted in their development. This includes the Resident Evil series, particularly the 2002 remake of the first game, the 2019 remake of RE2, and 2020's remake of RE3. Wow, what kind of stars were aligned to make that happen? So if the movie looks like it's one big cutscene for an RE game, it's because it essentially is.
Destroy their brains?
Shoot them in the head.
But I have to admit, I kind of like that. I've always wondered what it would be like if you gave developers, video game developers, extra time and budget. Could they make a movie that's better than what Hollywood would churn out? Hold a gun to my head and force me to watch either Rise of Skywalker or any of the cinematic trailers for the Star Wars Old Republic game, I'm gonna choose the trailers every single time. In just a hair over 6 minutes, the Betrayed trailer tells a far more emotionally gripping story than Kathleen Kennedy's entire trilogy did. So, why aren't there more like this from other developers?
Freaks! Yeah! Woo!
Moving on, as a casual fan of the Resident Evil franchise, I have to admit, it's really good to see Claire Redfield again. Yeah, I just bashed her character model, but I've always liked her character from the video games. Personally, I would prefer to see more of Jill Valentine, but I'll take Claire. And here, she does retain some of that Code Veronica awesomeness. That kick, though. I want to marry that kick. With being the more passive character, I think she was always intended to be. She spends more of her screen time being a general protector and gathering intel. Her contributions seem to be more focused on unraveling the mystery that the story presents. Honestly, in a lot of ways, I would actually consider Claire to be the more interesting protagonist between her and Leon. And it kind of does seem like Leon's just here to shoot zombies and be a familiar face, doesn't he? Leon over the years has been what Legolas has been to the Lord of the Rings franchise. Over the top in how cool he is. Trust me, wait till we get to Vendetta. If Degeneration cranks his action movie status up to 11, then Vendetta breaks the knob right off. But later on in the story, Claire gets injured, is in the thick of danger, yet she's still limping around and saves Leon once. A bit of a tragedy that Leon is basically the resident Superman of the movie, well, the franchise as a whole, I guess. But it does Claire justice, and that's fine by me.
That little girl will probably have nightmares for the rest of her life because of you.
I miss zombies. Does anyone else miss zombies? I know, the franchise moved away from the standard shamblers for a reason. You gotta keep the franchise fresh somehow, right? But man, I miss zombies. And I get plenty here. And we get an on-screen freak mutation. While I have a complaint about this later on, I do want to highlight that compared to the live-action movies, which shied away from showing anyone transforming into anything super hideous, this movie is not. The bioweapon here is grotesque, reminiscent of Dr. Birkin from Resident Evil 2, and has plenty of screen time to establish presence and intimidation.
Zero submerged system will engage soon. 10, 9, 8.
Okay, so the movie has some glaring flaws, and it's time to talk about those. First and foremost, this is definitely made for the fans, those who are actually familiar with the Resident Evil franchise, its characters, and lore. If this is your inception into Resident Evil, then you're probably gonna have a rough go. Honestly, there might even be spells where die-hard fans may have a hard time watching this, and that's primarily because of how convoluted the story is. I hate to keep bringing up the games, but I gotta. The games are deceptively complex with lore that spans decades. Not all of it plays directly into the games, but it does give you an idea of how deep the rabbit hole goes, and does let you know that even though the games are classified as survival horror, there's way more to it than just running around shooting zombies and monsters. But this takes that rabbit hole, pushes you into it, and you're violently pinballing against the walls. The government conspiracies and terrorist threats are practically more front and center than the actual monsters that fans would want to see. Keep it in the background, not the foreground. Come on, man! I could barely keep up with all of the accusations, who's responsible for who, what, where, how, when, why. All that seemed to truly matter was Curtis wants the evil people in the government who covered up the raccoon incident to be exposed, even if he has to resort to terrorist means. I can see what the creators are going for, a more human-centric story. And for a movie like this, especially a Resident Evil movie, you kinda need that. But when your movie is 90% human and 10% bioweapons, something is phenomenally wrong there.
It's like something out of a horror movie. Those creatures rising up out of their graves. Ooh.
That's the other problem with the movie. The ratio between story and monsters is completely unbalanced. Even the worst of the Resident Evil live-action movies got this down, giving us varied monsters for Alice to contend with. Granted, most of them are easy monsters or don't live up to their true potential, but it's diverse enough. Here, we only get two. Classic zombies, which should be the default, and the third act monster. That's it. Someone slap the creative director's wrist. He or she or they deserve it.
You're a real pain in the ass.
The writing is also pretty lame at times with dumb characters.
Stop! Or I'll shoot!
Yeah, Angela is pretty annoying in this. And you also have bad direction.
We could slip out through the regular entrance.
I will not skulk out of here like some whipped dog.
And yet, he's still wearing a suit and has his bodyguards around him. Very inconspicuous gentleman.
But she's got a new hat.
Diving into quick spoilers here. Don't want them? Jump to this time code. Swinging back to the positives, I do give credit that the movie did a pretty good job of making the audience think that Frederick is a good guy, just caught up in a situation that makes him seem bad. Turns out he actually is, and it's played with pretty well. I like that twist.
He warned me not to let you see anything.
Would it cause trouble if I saw something in particular?
No.
Swinging back to the negatives, definitely the worst of the writing comes from the beginning. Very specifically, why are there zombies on the airplane? Did I miss something? The outbreak in the terminal makes sense. Either Curtis or Frederick could have done that. But the plane? What, were there two completely separate outbreaks happening at the same time? Seriously, was this ever explained?
This can't be happening.
Not exactly a huge shock here, but the final act monster is Curtis. Not inherently a bad thing, at least up until they do the Resident Evil Apocalypse thing and give the monster humanity.
He's mutated. I want him in the Nemesis program.
I'm so sorry.
Look, some retention of past self could be used effectively. The zombies in Half-Life, for example. The human host, despite having zero control over its body, still retains a level of consciousness. But to go full-on remembering who he is and talking, it takes away some of the menace. Never do that with these creatures. The inhuman scream was enough. It ain't perfect. And if you wanted to call it a bad movie, I wouldn't necessarily disagree. But then again, Resident Evil has always been kind of treated as a B movie, and that's what it is here. You have your silly moments mixed with the serious, and it's blended pretty well. Sure, the actual story is a tangled mess, and the imagination of what kind of monsters would be encountered is staggeringly limited. But it's Resident Evil. When I look at the screen, I see Claire Redfield. I see Leon Kennedy. I want to see less of them, if I'm honest, but that's an argument for another time. The point is, I believe this is Resident Evil. If you're a fan of the Resident Evil franchise, I say give it a shot if you haven't seen it. Pop a couple of beers and relax. Enjoy yourself. My honest rating for Resident Evil Degeneration, a strong 3 out of 5.
If you don't try to save one life, you'll never save any.
Thanks so much for watching, you guys. I really appreciate it. Have a great day. Stay safe and healthy out there. Hope to see you soon. One final caveat as you guys move on with your day, I've decided to test my luck at a Patreon, so please consider supporting the channel. No obligations, of course, no content is gated off, but any and all contributions would mean a lot. Link in the description. Have a great one, folks.